Tuperos y tuperas, today on DOOP by the River. Ladies and gentlemen, the Casper sale has been official. He's off to Chicago. We'll talk about our thoughts on that move. Of course, with Casper leaving, that means someone else has to come in. Mikel Ore. Is it going to happen this week, Philadelphia? We're going to talk about that, as well as the Union are restocking even for more on the striker position. We got a homegrown signing. We got a lot to get to here today, and you do not want to miss this episode of DOOP by the River. And let's get started, guys. Hey, got it. And that is right. Welcome, everyone, to DOOP by the River, the show where we follow everything Philadelphia Union. And, of course, we are brought to you by Philly Sports Network. Before we dive in today, ladies and gentlemen, real quick, make sure you guys hit that like button and subscribe as we broadcast every single week on Edward Philly's YouTube channel. And make sure to find us on PSN Radio, wherever you see podcasts, Apple, Google, and Spotify. And you can find all of your favorite Philly Sports Network podcasts on there as well. Ladies and gentlemen, no, we do not have Justin. No, we do not have Tim or Zach. They are taking it off this week. So today, we got some great super subs. Not one, but two El Senos coming on here, ladies and gentlemen. So let's introduce them here today. First up, we got my man, Mr. Don Chris from Mr. I like the name there, Mr. All 3 Points. I love it. What's up?
Yeah, yo, it's great to be here. I like the hype music at the beginning, too. I was dancing. I'm glad the mic was off. I'm glad the camera was off because I was feeling it.
That's what we try to do here, Chris. We try to keep the vibes going. We try to keep positive because, here, not just with the Union, but in Philly sports, it can be dark sometimes. Oof. The Union's been great, though, so we'll always keep those energies alive, man, for sure. Thank you for coming on, Chris.
It's good to be here.
Absolutely, man. And then, of course, this man needs no introduction here in the Philadelphia Union community, but please, ladies and gentlemen, from the Brotherly Game, please welcome Mr. Matt Ralph. Matt, it is so good talking to you, buddy. How you doing, man?
Good. It's great to be here. This is kind of like the Dad Rock episode with Chris on here.
That's cool.
Instead of playing in a garage band right now, Chris and I are on a podcast. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, that's fine. That's fine.
Hey, listen, anything to keep the fan base young for sure, man. I'm here for that. I'm definitely here for that. But yeah. So, guys, real quick before we start off, if for those who are not familiar with you guys, kind of a little bit of an introduction, Chris, for yourself, man. Kind of, talk about who you are, and especially, your fandom as a member of the fan base of the Philadelphia Union, and kind of a little bit of All 3 Points.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, my name's Chris. I run the All 3 Points podcast and the All 3 Points Twitter. I'm a writer and assistant editor for the Philly Soccer page, which has been around since 2008, 2009, writing about local soccer. Well, yeah, in terms of my fan OGs, I definitely had a jersey before there was a team. But, I like the idea that we could be the old heads and still have people that might see their first game tomorrow or encounter the Union like the first time on this show. So I like to find the middle ground to all that. But it's really good to be here.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate, especially all those people who've been covering the team since even before, the hype of leading up to 2010. I have the utmost respect for all those people, especially Sons of Ben members as well, man. It's always dope to have people like you who've seen it. Because obviously for myself, I was still a young buck in those days, so I really didn't have I wasn't like grasping it all like I do now. So definitely appreciate guys like you.
Listen, man, I was Sons of Ben member 107, but I'm not taking any credit for that group because there's people that spent half their life making that thing what it is, and so I got a lot of respect for them too.
Absolutely, and of course, Matt, you don't need much introduction, but kind of talk about just your involvement with Brotherly Game and kind of talk about a little bit about Brotherly Game as well.
Yeah, so I mean, I guess my OG credentials would be that in 2007, I was covering higher education in South Jersey, and you'd never think that covering higher education, you'd end up writing about MLS, but that's what happened when MLS announced that they were going to try to put a stadium in Glassboro. Actually, well, you don't want me to get technical about it. Not actually Glassboro, near Glassboro, on some land some peach farms that Rowan University had purchased at the time. But that was my introduction really to the team that would become the Philadelphia Union. I got my first emails after writing some stories from some people that who were part of this crazy supporters group that started forming around just this idea of, obviously that didn't work out, and it's a good thing it didn't. But I mean, could you imagine Johnny? Could you imagine going to Glassboro or Harrison Township to go to a soccer game right now? But
I mean, I would actually like that, Matt, because I actually live in Glassboro right now.
I know, but like just like how weird that would be,
Yeah, no, 100%, 100%.
And so and then I kind of moved out of the area, so I was never, I wrote about it, but then I kind of left and came back to Lancaster, and funnily, oddly enough, my first game at Subaru Park was a U.S. men's national team game against Colombia.
Nice. Hey,
were you there at that one, Johnny?
I was not, unfortunately.
Okay. And then kind of like through that, and then when I moved back to the area, that's when I happened to live like 10 minutes from the stadium, so got kind of connected to that. And then Casa, which probably a lot of people you talk to, like that's been their connection to all this, is probably through playing with Casa. And I know Chris has done a lot of that too. And then just got roped in, if you're going to play on a Casa team, like don't let on that you write or do anything with content, because you get roped into doing stuff. And that's kind of what happened. And then, ended up doing, some different things. And then for me, it's kind of been my way of still doing this journalism thing, and kind of scratching that itch into my 40s now. So it's been fun.
No, it's awesome. I appreciate everything you do, and obviously we'll talk about the article you put out today as well a little bit later. But you guys do a great job over Brotherly Game, not even just the writing team, but obviously we're big fans of the Doopy brothers as well. They're doing a great job as well. So for both of you guys, keep up the good work for sure.
Yeah, maybe that's my claim to fame, is that I get randomly mentioned on Doopy Brothers episodes. But
I thought you were going to say that you discovered the Doopy Brothers. I would give you credit for that.
Yeah, those guys are great. I love AJ and Luke.
Yeah, they're awesome.
They're good.
They're pretty hilarious. Pretty hilarious. Well, gentlemen, we have a lot to get to with this team. You guys ready to start chopping this up?
Yes.
Let's get to it. So, of course, we should probably start off with the news that's already been long overdue. On Saturday morning, as I'm waking up bright and early to do my Sixers recap, I get this beautiful notification that the Union have sent Kasper Shibilko to the Chicago Fire for $1.15 million in general allocation money, be spread out through these next 2 seasons. And I'm not gonna lie to you, but I'll tell you first off, as the fan, I was a little bit sentimental. I thought this was the right move, but then I took a second and I thought about the time and Kasper, man. Kasper was such a great dude. And obviously, he's going to be so important, going forward, especially in our history. I mean, he almost broke the single season record. He almost broke the all-time record in goals as well. And it's going to be sad to see him go, but I'm happy for him. He seems like I know he's going to enjoy Chicago, but first off. But I kind of want to get your guys' thoughts, and we'll start with Chris here. Chris, your thoughts on, Kasper leaving and the move in general?
I think I felt the same way you did. It was – I tweeted 2 weeks ago that in 12 months' time, Kasper Shibilko was going to be the Union's all-time scoring leader. Because I genuinely felt if they kept him around, he'd bang 17 more, and that would be it. And I even though I had read the reports and I heard the rumors, I was genuinely surprised it all came together. In the end, it kind of sounded like they just couldn't meet in the middle, but it sort of reminds me a little bit about when Sebastian Letou was traded the second time. It was like the month Ernie Stewart got here, I think he traded Letou. And I said to Jeremy on our show, yeah, I guess so. Like Ernie wants to put his mark on the team. Letou isn't quite fitting with this team right now. So it kind of reminded me a little bit of that, but I'm honest. If I'm honest with you, I think they could have made it work. And I think Union fans will genuinely reflect his career will be reflected better the more time we get from it, because I think people don't realize just how important he was to the last 3 seasons.
No, you're 100% right, and I agree with you there. You need it because obviously when Ernst got here, right, you need to define those pieces of play, and they probably weren't going to be, here long term, but you needed to find those pieces of players that were going to be part of this transition of what we're seeing now, this winning culture. We're an elite club in the MLS, which is wild to kind of say still to this day. Matt, your kind of takeaways on this Kasper deal.
Yeah, so it's interesting, as you just were saying that, Kasper is to Ernst Tanner kind of what Alejandro Bedoya was to Ernie, in the sense that, it wasn't a big deal when he signed him, but he turned into a big deal. And I think, in the same way that Bedoya kind of bought into this idea that like, hey, that we can build a team around you here and you can win something. Because Bedoya hadn't played in MLS before. He had been successful in Europe, and it took some convincing to get him to buy into this. And I think at one point there was some talk, a year before he actually ended up coming. So, it was something they had worked on for a while with him, and they really have built the team around him. And so, and a lot of the success has been as a result of the chance that Bedoya took, right? With Casper, it was more of the chance that, the Union took on him to say, hey, we have this great performance staff. Shout out to Garrison Draper, who brought in this guy that they weren't sure what they had, but they were able to get him back to full health. And I mean, it's amazing if you look at his injury history and see what did he miss that NYC game that time where he was a late scratch.
In one playoff game when he had a foot thing.
Yeah,
2 years ago. Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
He missed the NYC game, and then he missed I guess that would have been the Red Bull game after that playoff game.
Mm-hmm.
So 3 seasons, and that's all we can remember. As far as, I mean, I don't have data on this, but if you look across the league in terms of players at that position who have been that consistently in the lineup and available every game, yes, he was overworked last year because of necessity, and I think that probably led to some of the less than stellar outings that he had toward the end of the season. Also because he's, Chris can get into that tactical side of things, right? In terms of him not being as effective as a solo striker in a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
But, the consistency that he did produce, was he frustrating at times? Yes. Was he the greatest striker, in MLS history? No. But I think his, the ability, him being able to kind of come in and sort of help to sort of push through this new era, like you said, Johnny, you nailed it. Like, he was the guy. And, if MLS was more like MLB, Casper would have gotten a huge contract offer to stay. And then maybe ultimately went to Chicago anyway. But because soccer rewards future performance more than past performance. It was a situation where Chicago obviously is willing to put the investment in, and I think it's a great move for both teams. I'm a Chicago Cubs fan, so I'm a little bit
Gobies.
I've never liked the Chicago Fire. I saw them play when I lived in Chicago for a little bit, but now they've rebranded, and I'm like, oh, this is kind of cool. As a Cubs fan, I'm kind of into this. And, obviously it's such a large and vibrant Polish community in the city. And it's, if you're thinking about it from a personal level as a dad, and, he's got this young kid now, like,
yeah,
man, this is awesome. And it's also one of those things like, sometimes where you're like, yeah, I don't care if, I don't care if my friend moves away or whatever, and then your friend moves away, and you're like, man, this really sucks. Like, there's a little bit of that with it. It's like, oh, we won't miss him if he leaves. Like, I don't get attached to any players or anything like that. And then when it happens, and now I saw this picture just recently of him and Fabian Herbers, and I was like, oh man, like I miss those. I miss Fabian. Like, I always liked Fabian Herbers too. So, obviously not the player for the Union that. He didn't really kind of live up to his potential as a Union player, but there still is, it's definitely like a feeling of this is a move both teams really kind of needed to do. Mm-hmm. And it is a little bit, he's not going to be on this. And we're going to, like, yes, fans will cheer for him and whatever, but he probably will score a goal against Union. Let's just put that out there now. It's going to happen probably.
Yeah.
And people are going to be like mad about it, and they should be, especially if it was a mistake from one of the defenders that made that happen. So yeah, it's kind of a mix. I think it's a mixed bag of this is ultimately a good decision. Yes. Not knowing a lot of the behind the scenes and what happened, but my hope is that it was all done in a way that was, where both parties kind of felt like, okay, yeah, this was the right thing for us to do, and there's no hard feelings or animosity between between anybody involved in the situation. But that would be my hope. And by all accounts so far, at least in the public eye, like that's kind of how things have been presented.
Absolutely. No, 100%. I'll say, like, like most of our guys here on the pod, besides Zach had some very passionate words of Kasper Spielko. But if you ask like Tim, Justin, and I, like, we love Kasper, we really appreciate him, but we saw the bigger picture. Like, we felt like we could have gotten an upgrade from Kasper Spielko. We felt this after the season, right after the season ended. So if we were to find a striker that had more value, who was a little bit better than Kasper Spielko, we would have been all in on that and get some value in the same time for Kasper. I would have not been mad at seeing Kasper Spielko return back here. And I get it. Like, the dude just won the Golden Boot in the Champions League, right? So he feels highly. He feels that he should be a striker with a guaranteed contract. That's kind of why he wanted. He was looking at other things, especially Chicago. But one thing I will mention as well, this move to me kind of shows the brilliance of Ernst Tanner as far as negotiation goes. I mean, we saw him do some great sales with some of our youngsters and Mark McKenzie, Brendan Anderson last offseason. This year, I mean, the fact is we got this guy for free. We got Kasper for free. And we made $1.50 million off of him. That is great business, gentlemen. You know what I mean? Absolutely. So it's definitely. Go ahead, Chris, if you got something there, if you want to chime in there.
No, we had a little choppy. No, I was going to say, I think that's one thing fans have to understand is, Ernst has this vision of where we need to be and where we're supposed to be. And we've been ahead of schedule, I think, for 2 or 3 years in a row. But you're right. I think the most important thing to take away from the Kasper situation is that he was bought for nothing. He's going to have his name in the Union record books forever. And then they got $1 million and change for him. And all of that happened, nobody saw that coming except for maybe the guys in charge. And I think that's the testament to say, like, okay, these guys might have an eye for what they're looking for.
Absolutely. So, so obviously with Kasper leaving, that means someone has to come in, right? So not official yet, but from all accounts, everything points to the fact that the Union have agreed to terms with Mikkel Ore, a 26-year-old Danish striker from Denmark, Brøndby, and obviously I have to shine some light on my man here, Matt Ralph. If you guys haven't already, make sure you guys check out the Brotherly Game. Matt Ralph had a great article. It was an interview with someone who knows who's seen Mikkel Ore close and personal. And you guys definitely check this out. I'm showing you guys here on the screen. If you guys are watching this live on YouTube, definitely check out this article here on Brotherly Game. The interview is right down here. But I kind of want to start this topic here with you, Matt. Obviously, we don't have the official word from the Union, but obviously JT put out that tweet today. We all saw 2.8 million transfer fee, 1.5 million in player wages yearly. So the deal, I mean, that's pretty damn good. You just sold Kasper for 1.15 mil. You buy Mikhail for 2.8. So that's pretty solid business. And all accounts, everything looks like this guy's gonna be an upgrade for what we're trying to do with Kasper, an upgrade from Kasper Spielko. So Matt, just your discussion in that interview you had and what you do know of Mikkel Ore.
Yeah, there's a few things I think that stood out to me. I don't really know a whole lot about the Danish league.
I think all of us were the same boat.
It's definitely not one of the top leagues in Europe, right? But we obviously saw, Mukhtar has done incredibly well with Nashville, and he's really been a player that they've built their team around. I mean, they've been, pretty outstanding as their first 2 seasons, and I don't necessarily like them, but they draw too much, and maybe they'll continue to be that team that is tough to get by in the playoffs like they were this year. But so I don't know a ton about that, but just what I'm hearing, the thing that excites me is because I don't really, is he an upgrade? I don't know. I mean, we'll see, right? Shabilko, they're big shoes to fill. But the thing I think that's interesting about this situation is that he doesn't actually have to replace Shabilko's goals. Yes, they've spent a lot of money on him, but Carranza has been brought in. presumably they'll still have Sergio Santos and Corey Burke available, and hopefully available more often than not. This young guy we'll talk about as well. Maybe he'll be available for some games where he's not playing with Union 2 or something. But I think that the thing that's really exciting to me about it is that it seems like he's a good fit from like a character, from a work ethic. He's got young children, which he'll fit right in with a lot of the players on this team, and their kids, little kids running around. Yeah, and that's great. I think there's definitely a culture that's developed around this team, bringing in you have this mix of young dads with like young men. I don't like calling them kids because they're a lot of you're 18, you can die for your country. So they're young men, right? They're young, and they're also like 18 going on 26. I mean, whatever age Jack McGlynn's birth certificate says, like add 5 years to that, right? So in terms of his development and just what he's been able to accomplish. So it's just it's a cool mix that they have, and I think one of the things that they've shown in their recruiting of players is that they recruit a certain level of a character and work ethic, and just the way that they come in, and you see that in the popularity of him as a player. Like, yes, goal scorers are popular sometimes, not all the time, but just the way that the fans in Denmark talk about this guy, it has me excited, because he seems like someone who's really pretty humble, keeps his head down. I'm a big fan of the guys you would run into at Reading Market and not know that they play professional soccer, and that's how he's been described. I think Gazdag is that guy too. So
you don't hold the same sentiment as the rest of the fan base.
What's that?
You don't hold the same sentiment as the rest of the fan
base.
I know. Mario Balotelli.
Yeah, no, don't even. Yeah, I'm definitely the less assuming a person is, the more I'm excited about them being on the soccer team I root for. So I know there's a lot of things I think that appear to be positive. I mean, there's going to be an adjustment period. Hopefully, immigration gets their junk together, and it's not too long of a wait to get them over here. But we've seen not to to sort of, that's an open-ended thing with some of these.
Do you think that's
Stuart Finley last year? Stuart Finley, that was just such a difficult situation. He gets hurt while he's waiting to come over, and then just never really got a chance to actually fight for that position. So
that's such a good point.
So yeah, but no, everything looks really positive so far.
Do you think that's part of the delay of this announcement, the immigration?
Possibly. All these things, Chris. I mean, it seems like they're all like sort of unique situations. Like, I mean, remember Dutch Cal came in, was hanging around the team, but then they couldn't announce him. Like, he was trying. I mean, and then he had an ankle injury. I mean, it's just there's just I don't have a lot of insight into that, but it just seems like these situations are very much like a case by case basis. And there's a lot of things that happen in the process of. I mean, I don't know. I've moved several times in my life. There's a lot of stuff that happens that you just can't anticipate.
That's true. I mean, hashtag Union Striker Watch is actually a real thing. So we gotta figure this out, man. We definitely do. So
announce
and of course our buddy Paul, he goes on the it was the Sorensen sign, and he goes, anyone who mentions jersey or kit drops and Mikael Ore, they're getting a red card. I was Paul's that great character. Chris, your thoughts, man. Any thoughts? I mean, obviously we don't know too much about Mikael Ore besides some highlights. We don't all watch Bron B a lot, but and just your thoughts on Mr. Mikael Ore.
Yeah, my saying, if you're playing Tanner ball and they sign a new guy, if you've ever heard of him, they spent too much money. Like, that's it. That's the rule. Yeah. And I've never heard of him, so like it's in that ballpark. But I think about this from, I mentioned the vision that Tanner obviously has for the team, and they started with these building blocks that were either they cost $0 or they cost very little money. You think about Kai Wagner, who cost $300,000, Shabilko, who we talked about, who cost $0, right? Like these little pieces along the way, and they reached for a couple people. So they reached for Matej Orvek, and they missed that, and they they spent a little money, right? They re-upped Montero, which at the time was like whatever, $2 or $3 million to keep him from Mets, and another 1.5 to pay him. But they're sort of like building these bricks, and each successive brick is a little bit more important than the brick before it. And so now, right, you said we don't want the guy that got us 17 goals last year, but we do want this guy, and we don't want this other guy from Venezuela, and we want this other guy from Inter Miami. And so no single one of those guys has to do what Casper did, but they do have to contribute more than what Casper contributed in sort of like the goals, assists, and broader context of the team, because right, they didn't really rebuild any part of their roster except the top. So like these guys now, this is it, right? It's not is El Brujo going to be a good player? Is Bedoya too? No. It's these dudes at the top of the 2 of the 4-4-2. So to me, it changes the whole conversation of like, we're not going to just like say the strikers don't get enough service and they're not good enough because we haven't gotten the ball. Now it's like, no, we're paying a ton of money for y'all. You need to score goals now, period. No more excuses. That's like totally different narrative than the Union have ever had. Right? Like, when did we ever
Sugar
say
ball,
it?
baby.
Yeah, that's it.
That I think you really raise a good point, because the whole, like, and especially for me when I watched the playoffs, like, to me I felt like every phase of the Union's game was spot on. But when you're not getting that production up top, and the fact that we went on the run that we did, you get a Jakob Gles's screamer at the end, you get a great performance by Andre Blake in the shootout, and you make your goals as well. And to me, like that's why I said, like, that's why we need to invest in this position. And you got two guys here, Carranza and Mikel Ore. All things are pointing that those guys will get more majority of the play, but we shall see. But my next question here on this point here. So Matt, in your interview, I thought I heard that a lot of the times Bromby would run a 4-2-2-2. And I have heard Jim talk about before. Obviously, we've heard the 3-back set, but also potential possibly playing with a box in the midfield. Now, like, obviously, we also did run the Christmas tree last year. Where do you see the tactics going into next season? And we'll start with you, Matt, on this one.
Yeah, I mean, if you go back to what Chris said, and I think it's not just because I like Lego, but the idea of building blocks is a really good way to think about this. And I think, was it Rich Laurie on Twitter has said, you just listen to what Ernst says, because he basically explains everything. And he said before, I think early on, what about sort of working their way up to having being able to do a bunch of different formations, right? And I think I remember an interview that I did with Kai Wagner, certainly shortly after his arrival. That was one of the things he said. He's like, well, it's not so much like it's not Germany. It's not so much the formation. It's just that you can do a lot of different things and keep people guessing and keep in. And so we've sort of seen that the progression in year 2, season 2 was this. They kind of stuck to more strictly kind of, they were the 4-4-2 diamond team, and of course they had the personnel for that with Brendan, and Mark was in there too as well, of course. And then last year they had to make some adjustments that were forced by availability of players and everything, but they were able to sort of be a little bit less predictable, because I think one of the things coming out of 2020, I mean, they benefited from the fact that the season was not complete, right? It was very incomplete, and they played the same teams over and over again. But the second season of this, it was okay. We know what the Union's going to do, and so they needed to be a little bit less predictable. And part of the problem about being less predictable is when you lose Brendan Aronson, because he used the sort of the ace card about like the unpredictability of that team, and what was so good about the offensive aspect of how they scored goals when Brendan was on the team. And we didn't see a lot of those goals you just watched like over and over and over and over again last season. We saw a lot of, okay, they got the goals, all right, like let's move on to this other thing that was actually more interesting in the game than the goals. And so I you can really see with like kind of the pieces and the building blocks of this becoming a team that is able to do a lot more sort of different things and have different looks and have. And one of the things that Jim has really shown as he's grown as a coach is how much he really is like. I mean, he's great with the players, all that. He's great with the media. He does all those things, right? Like that's like you check those boxes off. But he's really shown his ability to just be like a chess master, and to really, and I think one of the things that Jim has needed more of is more chess pieces to move around on the board, and I think the development, the slow and sort of steady development, I know it gets frustrating when you don't see homegrowns on the field, blah blah blah, but like he's had to do what he can do with that, and the sort of the development of those players as pieces that he can work in, and then adding not just one striker but a couple strikers. And I think he's being given a little more to work with, and that he can really sort of show his ability to game plan against teams. And again, this so much of this, Ernst, not taking anything away from Ernst and Jim, but so much of this is there's so many people in that building in Chester that are part of this, right? I mean, I mentioned Garrison Draper earlier with the performance staff earlier and keeping players healthy and all that, but then the video stuff, and the way that seeing Jose Martinez in the third day of training over watching a screen of breaking down stuff that happened. So that there's just a lot of elements to this, and I think, like Chris said, it's building on those things, and this year is another year in that building block that they're able to hopefully now take some even more expensive pieces and fit those in.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Michael Thomas is checking on in from Twitter. We all love Michael Thomas's takes there. So many pieces, going to be tough to find the minutes for everyone. They are deep. That's kind of what they're built upon. I mean, the competition all over the pitch, the depth as well as from every position. It is truly remarkable as well. Chris, do you anticipate them sticking to that 4-4-2 diamond, or you see something a little bit different this upcoming season?
I go back and forth between the diamond is the best shape and shape doesn't matter. I'm like somewhere in the middle there. Even 2 and 3 years ago, they were inverting Bedoya and Ray Gaddis on the right. Like they would let Ray Gaddis get into the corner, and Bedoya would be back in what was essentially a 3-man back line. So I think about this. Like, I think Jim Curtin coaches to the millimeter on that field, right? Like those guys know the same way like a chess master doesn't actually play chess pieces. He or she plays the formation essentially. Like they can see the board and say, okay, the next move in this board is this, and it doesn't actually matter what anything else happens. I think they coach it in that way so that they get their rhythm right. But I suspect that you'll see a lot more variety this year, because all the way back when Ernie got here, his goal for the team was to be 2 deep at every spot. And every successive year since then, I think we've said they're closer to that vision than they were the year before. But this year, for real, there's 2 guys at every spot who could start on MLS teams, like period. There's 2 guys at every position who, if you held an MLS draft, a re-entry draft tomorrow, they'd get snapped up and they'd be in a starting 11. So that to me says there's probably not, like, I don't think Matt Real is going to get the minutes that he wants. I don't think, unless they sell Wagner. However, Matt Real can start in MLS. And last time he started, a couple games ago, he did a pretty nice job against Carlos Vela. So like he's going to be okay.
Good point.
Yeah. So I mean, I think there's quality there. They can be creative if they want to.
It should be a lot of fun, and Jim's got a lot of toys to play with, and that's the important part here as well. But not only are we getting these Michael Ore rumors, but from Venezuela, we had some more rumors coming out of there. Jose I'm going to try my best. Reasco. Yeah. That's just my attempt there. But Jose has been heavily rumored to the Philadelphia Union. As we know, I don't know how Ernst got into to tap into this pool, but he's been able to find some Venezuelan players here, and now he's got a center forward, 17 years old. When I see players that are about the age of my younger brother, who's 10 years younger than me, it is truly remarkable what's happening right now. But this is a very interesting signing if it does become official, which all things lead that it's going to be official. This is a kid who obviously probably going to add some depth to the striker position. He's got a lot of promise, and from what I see here, he actually signed the senior league deal on January 1st of this year. So it's truly remarkable here. But Deportivo La Guardia selling him off to the Philadelphia Union. Now, guys, I mean, I don't expect you guys to know how a lot of Jose, right? I don't expect you guys to know, but kind of like, your thoughts on the direction the Union heavily investing into this position. Chris, we could start with you, man.
Yeah. I several years ago, I said this to Jeremy on our show, and I think it still holds true because I think Jim Curtin, you mentioned, he's the, if there's one thing he does above all else, it's he's a people person, right? He manages people really well. And I'm sure that it's not an accident that they got El Brujo and said, this is a Venezuelan guy who we sort of are going to bring into the fold, and he's going to go. There's got to be other Venezuelans who understand him and understand his culture, who are just as talented and overlooked as he is, because they've done this before with Brazilian players. They've done it before with German players. They've done it before with French players, where they get these little groups of 2 and 3 and 4 and 5 guys who speak the same language, who are from the same country, who can be comfortable together in this new place. And so I look at this like they proved their methodology. Yeah, Thomas, is there a scout in Venezuela? There probably
there
right?
has to be, yeah.
Right. They proved this methodology, and now that they know that they have these guys who can come here and be comfortable, like if I were going to go to Venezuela and play soccer, it would help if I knew that there were like 1 or 2 Americans there who had done it and proven it out, and I could be like, okay, if I'm feeling like I really just need to talk to somebody in English and just like get back to my home space, I can hang out with those dudes. And I think the inverse is true. Like it must feel really comfortable if you're coming from Venezuela to the United States to have a couple other guys from Venezuela who understand what life is like in your world. Like that, I think that's really useful. And I think it's part of the man management philosophy that they have at the club.
Absolutely. Matt, this kind of feels like a homegrown signing, if I'm being honest with you.
It's a big net.
And I do worry a little bit because, like I said, he literally just signed on to the senior team at LaGuardia, and now he's getting sold. He's getting sold again. What are your thoughts on this type of move here for the Union?
Yeah, I mean, he technically can't move till he's 18, which is on the 2nd, I guess. So I don't know if that's. I think you could announce something and it just doesn't become official until he turns 18. But they did announce Anton Sorensen finally on his birthday, so maybe they're waiting for his 18th birthday to announce it. But it's interesting. I think the Union 2 situation has been a weird situation to say the least. They had a season where they were playing games and they let media in for games that weren't against MLS teams, and so far they haven't really. I mean, there's still no schedule for next pro. There's still there's some stuff coming out from the Athletic reporting. There's some things I've heard from different sources, but it's a weird situation. It's not. I think where I'm at with it is I think the Union are good, but the part that they can't control is everybody else. So. And that's gonna determine how good of a league it is all the other teams, and we've seen how poorly a lot of the other teams have done all of these things that the Union they're good at, certainly, but they get even more credit for being good in part because of how bad some of these other teams are.
Yeah.
So I think they have kind of established this model with their second team. When they still the last couple of years before the season where they kind of played friendlies, but of bringing in players from South America, young unproven players who are in that kind of 18 to 20 range that they can maybe find some value on. They loan them in, they send them back if they don't work out, kind of thing. And so that's been a strategy that hasn't really produced hasn't necessarily produced. I mean, Bizo did sort of come in that way, and Galena came in and played for the first team, but didn't play. If you remember, and the Ayuk thing was kind of that, like trying to find these sort of gems in that the 18 to 20 range from places that are sort of out of the way. And I think spending money on one of those, like it sounds like they're doing with this Jose, maybe is a new tact in that direction. And it is, the academy has not produced a top striking talent, but very few academies have, other than FC Dallas, maybe Toronto at this point. So, that's a position of need, and it's a position of need all over the world. So if they can, they can invest a little bit of money, find some of these players, bring them in, and the Davos situation, they took a flyer on, it didn't work out, but they didn't really put a whole lot of money in there, and I think they probably got a lot of that subsidized by the league anyway. So, I think it's a good, if you look at it as like they have like multiple fronts, they have this academy, and they're always, Jim is constant recruiting. And every time he talks about trying to get young people from other parts of the country to consider the Union, from players around, just trying to kind of have the Union be sort of this factory that brings in players, not just from Philly, but from around the country, and then from as teenagers, but then obviously, unless they have a U.S. passport, they can't come in until 18. So, to sort of have some of those players come in through that doorway too. So, I think it's a good move. I don't know anything about him, and again, I would be a little concerned about, like, okay, what is he going to get meaningful minutes in this new competitive platform? And I don't know at this point.
Yeah,
no one really knows. We don't know what it's going to be. So
I'll have to dive into my Venezuelan pool again, see if I get some information on Jose. But it's I thought I saw you. Did you report? Didn't we get a pair of siblings from Venezuela, the Zambrano brothers,
they're from Ecuador.
Okay,
Yeah.
All right. But even a whole entire South America, they except for Colombia, for some reason they don't want to go back to Colombia ever since the Valdez.
Yeah, and the Zambrano brothers, they're young, but I think their dad was born in New York, so there's again, you need to have some kind of you can't just bring in 15-year-olds from another country.
That is pretty true. Okay, that makes sense then. Uni 2 is going to have some interesting stories to follow this year. Thomas checking in as well. I'm excited to have Uni 2 back. Marlon LeBlanc is running the ship over there, right?
Yes, he is. Yep.
Love what he's doing, man. Absolutely love what he's doing. But speaking of which, not only do we have Jose coming in here, but the Union also signed in from our own backyard, Anton Sorensen. This is obviously been something that we've kind of been anticipating for a while now. But it's very interesting, gentlemen, because of what we kind of discussed a little bit earlier. The Kai Wagner rumors earlier. Will he be going in the near future? And then, of course, we got Matt Rial back. But then you got this young kid who is a natural left back, from my understanding. So, we don't have to shift over Nathan Harrell like the Eastern Conference Finals over to the left back position. So that'd be great to see. Matt, I know, man, you love to keep an eye out on those on the youth academy. What can you really tell us about Anton Sorensen coming up here with the first team?
Yeah, so he came in. He's from Ann Arbor. He was born in Haiti, actually, and he was recruited to play initially on the U17 team, and then came in the same time as Jack McGlynn, I believe, and a couple others. And he, again, like this past year has been kind of. I've seen him play here and there. I've seen him train with the first team, and it's hard to really kind of evaluate a player from that perspective. Obviously, has a lot of the tools of. And there's the film that we do have on him from games are, it's pretty exciting. Some of the stuff he's done, he was doing, he was playing with Jack McGlynn and Paxton Aronson and Nathan with Union 2 and USL Championship 2 years ago. And he was arguably, he was right there with them in terms of, if you look, I said at the time, and, that he was the only player on the field that should be a pro that wasn't at the after Paxton and Jack and Quinn and Brandon sign their contracts and join the first team. So yeah, a lot of promise. Outside backs though, even with Nathan, Nathan's he'll be 21 this season, but they're not you can't I guess. And Chris can talk about this as a defender. And even with Matt Rial, he's still only 22, which for a left back is not ancient.
I did not
right?
realize
So
that.
I know, it's crazy. It's really crazy.
So there's and part of the thing with the Union is they ask a lot of their outside backs. And,
yeah.
A lot of times, like you'll see all of the things you want to see going forward, but not the things going back, or you'll see all the things defensively that you want to see in an outside back, but not the things going forward. Ray Gaddis, right? That's the story of his career. But So it's a little harder to predict, and obviously not knowing. It seems like Kai Wagner is staying at least till the summer at this point, but
Yeah.
we're almost on the deadline, I guess. So, Bizo's African Cup of Nations hasn't worked out. So, I thought maybe if he had a breakout tournament like the guy who's been playing over him has, I think their right back has been excellent. Unfortunately for Olivier, but that maybe he would have been someone that could have generated some offers on the transfer market as well. So. It's definitely the he's 19. He's right on schedule in terms of where he needs to be at this point as a left back, and I think you just sort of treat him like you did Nathan Harrell this past year, wanting him to play, but knowing he might not get any minutes unless half the team gets COVID. But
oh my God, don't remind this fan base, man.
That's cold. Oh man.
Sorry.
Oh,
if you can't laugh about it now, I mean, come on.
I love it.
Oh,
it's so ridiculous. I mean, it's so ridiculous. Like,
yeah.
Remember some Twitter account with like 3 followers tweets it out, and they're like, "There's no way," and then it turns out to be true, and you're like, "No, what the heck? Like, what?"
We
real.
We heard about it Tuesday, and we were asked very nicely not to say anything. And we didn't because, we only got a couple folks that we can talk to down there, and the trust is really important. But I remember thinking Tuesday morning, I need to scream this from a mountaintop because there's a lot of people who are going to be super, and we didn't. But man,
that was a rough week.
And then I had and then even leading up to it's like, someone told me like, yes, they're absolutely. I'm like, there's no chance they can play. No, there's no chance they can play. I'm like, are you sure there's no chance? I didn't say anything because I'm like, I'm just not even touching this, right? It's we'll just go with what the official reporting is, but because I wasn't about to. Yeah, it's like this. He's like, no, 100%, they're not playing. I'm like, are you sure? Like I kept texting that. Are you sure? Are you 100%? He's like, yes, 100%, they're not playing. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me.
I think what's
biggest what ifs, man.
It is a big what if, and I think what's wild about that is like from today, which is January 26th. It's really easy to be like, oh yeah, it was Omicron, and everybody catches Omicron. It doesn't matter what you do, like you're going to catch it, even if you sit in your room by yourself. But that was like 1 week before Omicron was a thing, and so the fact that everybody caught it, but it was vaccinated and doing all their smart things, that wasn't part of the lexicon yet, and so. It didn't make any sense, right? It didn't make any sense that everybody caught it. And man, yeah.
Yeah, I think all of South Jersey got the following week, right, Johnny?
Yeah, I mean, yeah. I mean, I got it, so it's it definitely caught around here for sure.
Everybody has it. It's like everyone's got Omicron.
Yeah,
that was a rough 2 days for sure. Chris, Mike asked a really interesting question. I wanted to throw it to you, man. If Wagner goes at some point this year, who has priority at left back? Would you give it to Sorensen, Reed, or Leon Flock?
I think the Union ask more of their outside backs than they do of any other position on the team, other than maybe if they're playing in a Christmas tree with a single striker, what they ask of their strikers. But I think there's so much irony in the fact that this academy has produced 2 left backs now, and neither of them can see the field because they got some dude from the German 3rd division instead. But I think it's because they ask so much of those outside backs. Like you need to be, as Matt said, you need to be the best defender on the field and arguably among the best attackers on the field too, because your service is as crucial as anybody else's. So I think Wagner's a commodity. I think there's no chance he stays for more than another year. And honestly, I'm shocked he hasn't gone yet. But who has priority? I think it's probably Real. I could see them putting Flock there, but Flock has said more than a couple times he really likes being at the 6. And so if you shift that diamond to that box like that, you could put Flock and El Brujo next to each other. They would be a little redundant because I think El Brujo offers a lot more going forward than Flock does, but like not the same thing going forward that you would necessarily want from an attacking midfielder. But that would give you a ton of freedom to get those backs up the field because now you'd have 4 guys sitting in this box beneath them. So yeah, I think it would be Real, and I think you'd put Flock in the midfield. anywhere because he's kind of a utility knife in that sense. Yep. And frankly, we listed out a bunch of the Ernst Tanner findings of players that he's found along the way. We didn't mention Flock's name. The fact that this dude came essentially from, again, no one had ever heard of him, and all of a sudden, like, he's in the conversation for, should this guy be starting in the World Cup cycle for the U.S. national team? Like, he might be the best number 6 on the team that's not named Tyler Adams. So, right? Like, I don't know. James Sands is cool, but is he, right? So, I don't know. I think it's probably Real. Yeah.
I like that. I agree. And to your point, man, they do a lot. I remember watching, I didn't realize this season. I was just watching the game at the Sioux, and I saw Kai Wagner taking a corner kick from the right corner. Mm-hmm. That means he's got to run all the way to the other side and up just to get back on defense. Yeah. Like, that's a lot. That's a lot of running, man. That's a lot of running.
Yeah, and it's interesting you mentioned that, Johnny, because I think, one of the things I do like about the box, and I did like it when they used it a lot at Union too, and maybe that's why I feel the way I do about it as it relates to Jack McGlynn. But, if you lose Kai Wagner, I think it increases your need to have Jack McGlynn on the field because of his ability with the ball on set pieces and dead balls. So, it does, and I would much rather see Jack McGlynn in the final third than Leon Flock. I'd much rather see Leon Flock in the defensive third than McGlynn. So I think the box does, it does accomplish that in the sense that, theoretically it gives McGlynn a little more comfort. It's a little more in McGlynn's comfort level in terms of, that he would have Flock behind him in that setup, and then he can, with those overlapping runs from the left back, he can go to work. So, and then if whoever he has in front of him, if it's Paxson, if it's Gazdag, or if Montero is still with the team. So, I think from that, do you think Montero?
Speaking of which,
I mean, I don't know. I wonder how the visas are going for his family, right? I think
he can't leave now. Like, there's no way he leaves now.
So wait, the story on that was, first it was the family thing, and then it was a locker room dust up, and then it was sort of both a family thing and a locker room dust up.
Yeah.
So any potential maybe a summer exit from Philly?
He's another one I thought AFCON could have raised his stock, but I mean, he wasn't bad, but he didn't. I mean, Cape Verde just didn't produce. There just wasn't enough going forward and he's playing sort of on that wing. He's not really. I don't know.
Yeah,
He did play the game. Actually, the game that he didn't do much of anything was the game he played centrally. So, I think he did do some things on the wing and created some chances, but just as a offensively, the Blue Sharks were not. No one was singing. I enjoyed watching them. I mean, I love that Irish center back they have there, but I enjoyed watching Montero play. But I thought he had a chance if he had done some a little more dazzling sort of things that he's capable of, like that CCL game that he played out of his mind. That maybe that would have been a little bit of a shop window, but I don't know at this point. I mean, you just. That's where some of this optimism, like, I'm on board, but also I'm like, well, the way that things can kind of, I mean, this past year I think was taught us a lot as a fan base and as people covering this team of how just so many unpredictable things could happen. I mean, the whole Montero thing was just weird. I mean, I think the COVID thing kind of like glossed over everything else that happened the entire season, but that was weird. And there was just some strange things that happened within the team.
I'm trying to put like the personal spin on this, because I always think about it like, what does it feel to be Jamiro Montero? Like, what must that life feel like? And so I try and give him a pass, because if we're talking about the building blocks, like, he's the biggest block. There's no bigger block than Miro until Mike Michalura gets here, or whatever. And if his understanding was, I'm just not coming off the field, and then you took him off the field in a game the Union were playing like garbage. They were playing terribly. I could see him being like, do we not understand each other? I'm Jamiro Montero. I'm the guy who stays on the field. But I also see it from the context of, like, I'm Jamiro Montero in the United States during COVID, and I can't see my family. And I don't want to be in Miami because Miami is the most boring soccer franchise in the whole world. I don't want to be here right now. And I definitely don't want to get subbed off the field right now, Jim.
Yeah.
Like, what are you talking about, dude? Leave me alone. I can understand all of that. That all makes sense to me.
Yeah.
I see. I love Jamiro. And a lot of people make the argument that he can't play the number 10. I think he could play the 10. I think he could play the 8. The issue I run with Jamiro is when he starts, acting like Ronaldinho in the midfield. He's doing these elasticos and everything. And like, instead of
one touch, dude, one touch, just ping it. Yes.
Exactly. That's pretty much it.
Real quick, wonder, has anything good ever happened for the Philadelphia Union in Florida? Like, has any
They won the Sun Coach. Don't you
no,
dare.
No, not preseason. No. I mean, although preseason, that was when Elsinho got that.
He got a red card first game against Red Bulls.
No, Elsinho got hurt in that Orlando game, and that was the game that Fafa got in a fight. Fafa got suspended for 4 games to start the season.
Oh my god!
I can't believe.
Miro got hurt in Florida, right? Wasn't that against Orlando City?
Yeah. Oh my god! Remember that slide tackle?
Sasha Question. Yeah.
Dude. Sasha Question.
Dirty.
It just seems, and MLS back had a lot of good things. They didn't win the whole thing like they should have, but it just seems like, I don't know, Florida is.
Does anything good happen in Florida? Like, not you specific, just like broadly.
Well, I'll say this: at least the Union didn't lose to the Tampa Bay Mutiny, right? So there you go.
That's true.
Mike's got another great question. If we assume a 4-man midfield, I'm curious who the odd man out ends up being. And when you guys were talking about that box, I couldn't help but think, like, where does Ali fit in that whole box type of circumstance? Obviously, the kids are out, right?
This is the question, right? Like when I was talking about too deep earlier, it's not even too deep. There's just like 10 dudes who could be on the field. I think, and I hate when people say, I've been saying they should do this for years. I think Bedoya should be a right back this year. I think this is the time. This is the place. No, I think it's a great question. Who's the odd man out? It's the young guys. You're right. It's the young guys.
I would say it's one of, well, I think you still work in one of them, and if it's some sort of rotation.
Yeah.
Again, like I said, I think the box is maybe the thing you do when you need to get Jack McGlynn in and get in minutes, right? And I think Bedoya, it's interesting because, I mean, that's another player that people are very, very passionately divided about, and you won't hear me say anything slanderous about Bedoya ever. The guy,
he's the dude.
He's just, he is the captain.
Let's put it this way: if I was a tats guy, there'd be a couple there'd be a nice tattoo of Alejandro Bedoya. Like it would be his face in the huddle. Like that would be
There's
right on my
time for you to be a tats guy, man. You got plenty of time.
Yes,
plenty of time.
We definitely need to get
I honestly think Bedoya is he's my number one for most successful post career of any player in Philadelphia Union history. I'm calling that now. I think he's gonna just. Yeah, he's got
Senator Bedoya from Pennsylvania.
Something, man. Whatever it is that he decides, like he's gonna kill it. Like he just.
I think what's interesting about him is he feels like he's from South Philly. Like he just feels like, yo, he's from South Philly. He says hoagie, he says Wawa, he says Wooder. Like he just feels like that. So it makes sense that he would be the guy.
He's hanging out in Passyunk.
He's going over to Joanne's house later.
Wow.
Funny story. When I was living in Philly, I was going to Acme in Northern Liberty.
I was gonna say I'm from South Philly right now. It is definitely Acme.
Yeah,
the Acme. And I'm going through the Northern Liberty's neighborhood, and who do I see as I'm driving by? Ali Bedoya with his wife just walking. I was like, I slowed down for a second. I was like, oh, Ali and Capitan, and he was like, oh, what's up? And I didn't want to creep him out too much, so I just drove off. But that's the beauty of having these Union players in the city, man.
I did want to say I was out one night. This was like 2 or 3 years ago. You mentioned Fafa being a nice dude, and the fact that he got like a 3-game suspension for some insane slur or something like that. I was at Gran Cafe L'Aquila, the Italian place.
Oh, he loves it there, man. He loves it there.
So I'm there. I run into Aurelian Collin and what was our German striker? Number 7, the guy who was here for 2 years.
Oh, Andrew Wooten.
So it's Wooten and Collin sitting in the booth. And I was all dressed up for work, and I just came over and I was like, "Hey guys, like, I just want to say I appreciate you or whatever." And they were like, "Oh, great to see you. You got a nice suit." And I was like, "Yeah, I know." But then I walked back to the bathroom, and Fafa's there talking to the kitchen staff and the busboys in Italian, and I was like, "Okay, this is my guy. Yeah, this is good."
He gets it. He gets it. That's why I miss Fafa. I still miss Fafa to this day.
Since we're on the topic of Chris's fashion, I just have to say that Chris tight rolled his pants on 90s night. And he was in the press box. I noticed it in the locker room. I was like, dude, you tight rolled your pants. That's amazing.
They're tight rolled right now. That's not 90s.
Awesome.
It's just right now.
No, I know. And I'm just saying, like, it was like the most perfect thing. Like, whether you planned it that way or not, I was just like, this is amazing.
Well, when we meet up for our yearly front office functions, Chris's suits definitely are always on point. When I'm assuming you're coming straight from work, so
I am. Yeah,
you got the suit going on. It looks good. It's like Chris is ready to interview for a front office job.
That's right. Yeah, I heard Chris Albright is gone. I'm here to take over. Yeah,
there you go.
It would be, it'd be a funny comedy movie where a guy who just looks the part gets the job, and this would be set in the 1980s.
That's Trading Spaces, basically, right? Yeah.
We'll make a Moneyball parody, and we'll have Chris as the star.
There you go.
Gosh, there's so much potential for screenplays that related to this soccer team that we all follow.
It's great, man. It's great.
Not saying they'd be good, but there's just a lot of material, a lot of potential.
I think it'd be good.
At least inspire ideas.
Absolutely. Well, guys, that's going to do it for another episode of DOOP by the River. That hour went by way too quickly. Before we sign off, though, guys, real quick, want to start off. Where can people find you? Chris, start off, man, on Twitter. And obviously, whatever all 3 points are, got going on in the future as well, man.
Yeah. So you can find us on Twitter at All 3 Points. You can find our podcast, the All 3 Points podcast, at phillysoccerpage.net, where I'm a writer and also associate editor. So appreciate being here. Appreciate anybody who's following along, and go Union.
Amen. What about you, Matt?
BrotherlyGame.com, and I'm on Twitter way too much at Matt_TBG.
Way.
And this is great. And I also want to give a shout out to Chris for his jersey evaluating skills. He's really good at that as well. If I ever am conflicted about how I feel about something, I just message Chris. I'm like, what do you think of this?
Yeah,
not to attention to detail, man. That's why we love you, Chris.
Appreciate that, guys.
Because he's like, you'll give a good reaction to it, even though if I'm like, or if I think you'll like it, but I'm not sure. Like, what do you think of this one? And and you'll say, well, actually, it's very derivative of. I think you did that to me one time. You're like, yeah, that really reminds me of like something super obscure. I was like, holy crap.
Yeah, well. Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. That's good. Yeah.
Awesome stuff, guys. Awesome stuff. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it. Make sure you guys hit that like button, subscribe to that Parceros Philly YouTube channel, as we always broadcast these DOOP by the Rivers lives on here. And this will be rebroadcasted on PSN Radio following this live recording. And you can find that wherever you stream podcasts, and you can find all of your favorite Philly Sports Summer podcasts on PSN Radio as well. Ladies and gentlemen, that is Chris, Mr. All 3 Points. That is Matt Ralph from the Brotherly Game. Of course, I go by the name of El Parcero Philly, and we are telling you guys to DOOP on. Talk to you guys next week.